The Accessibility Breakdown by Inclusion Impact Accessibility.
Hey, welcome to the Accessibility Breakdown. I am Mark, and this is
Justin.
Every week we pay tribute to those who stand out to us as leading by accessibility by picking 3 topics that strike us in some way. This week we're going to talk about the accessibility tree is how AI agents read your site and it's breaking. Interesting article here. We've talked a lot about AI, and there's a lot of good takes out there. This is an interesting take that relates so directly to accessibility. And then, as a lot of you are probably expecting, we're going to cover the last 2 in Wilco's series. What's the name of the series?
Design for All.
Design for All. So part 3, All or Nothing, and then part 4, WCAG's patient partner.
WCAG's patient partner, yes.
Yes. It's like, I don't know, if the word patient throws me off. And I'm like, is it patent or is it patient? So I had to pause there for a second. And Wilco really nicely, I think, rolls around and wraps these things up. So I'm excited to cover that. It's a really, let me just start by saying, if you didn't listen to episode 10 of the Accessibility Breakdown, you might want to go do that, because these 2 parts 3 and 4 are going to make a lot more sense to you. We'll make, the discussion will be okay anyway, so don't pull your car over to do this or anything, but maybe listen to them after. Be safe, drive safe, everybody drive safe. But just make a note that there's actually 2 that sort of precede this, and it's one of the things Wilco does brilliantly, I think, is just unfold this topic through these 3, through this 4-part series. All right, but let's start off, Justin, with the accessibility tree and how AI agents read your site and it's breaking. This is by Slobodan Manic. What do you think? How did I do?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, great. Points for me for pronouncing something correctly out of the gate. So I think that I really liked this article for a bunch of reasons, and we'll get into them. But I think in order for us to make sure everybody kind of stays with us here, is we probably should explain the accessibility tree and what that is. Because it's such an important concept in the way that he talks about AI, and he talks about how AI consumes content on the web now, and it's through this accessibility tree. And this brings this whole point home about how important accessibility is today, for more than just its sort of original purpose, which is so that people with disabilities could use it. And we've always known that accessibility contributes to search engine optimization. They don't line up 100% perfect, but they line up like 92% perfect. And probably more so as time gone on, those 2 things line up. But with artificial intelligence and bots doing the majority of the crawling on the web today, there's even more of an alignment, and the accessibility tree steps in and plays this role now, in the way that AI is searching the web. I'm happy to dive into that explanation, but you're probably better at it than I am if you want to dive into the explanation of what the accessibility tree is.
Sure. Well, and the Sloban does a nice job of the article itself does a nice job of explaining, give you an introduction to the accessibility tree,
100%.
What it is, how it works. But essentially, your web browser, whether it's Chrome or Firefox, hopefully Firefox, Edge, whatever web browser you're using, it interprets the HTML behind the scenes. The CSS brings all those things together and creates a model of all of the HTML elements and everything within that. And that is referred to as the DOM, the Document Object Model. That DOM is the full relationship of how of everything that's available on that page, all of the events, everything that changes, all that stuff is in there. What the accessibility tree does is it's actually created after the DOM is rendered, and it makes available only certain aspects of the DOM that are provide information, interactions, and other elements. So all the divs and things that are used for like drawing a box or adding a border or something, those things aren't important. They're really just style. There's no substance behind it. So the accessibility tree is the substance, the things that I can interact with and get information from.
So let me pull out an analogy here. So if you're non-technical and you're listening to this and you haven't hung up by now, turn off the podcast by now. Let me give you an analogy here, and you rate my analogy, Justin. Let me know if this is it. But so imagine you're walking to a building, right? And there's a receptionist in the building, and that receptionist has a big book in front of her, or them, right? That person has a big book in front of them that talks about all the different businesses in that building. Okay. So if you come in and say, I'm here for this, or I'm here for that, or does this business do that? They have this big book and they can flip through and they'll be like, oh yeah, Samantha Jones is the person that does that, and they are here on, this time, and they drive a blue Toyota Camry, like whatever information might be in there. That's a bunch of detail that person might need to do their job as a receptionist and really guide somebody. That's the DOM. The accessibility tree is when you look over and it lists all the businesses, and maybe it tells you what the businesses do and the people in the business, but it's narrowed down to the most important facts about if you go to the suite 3 on the 5th floor, or if you want to go to, whatever's the office that does this, it's on, tells you where it is. But and it's not a perfect analogy, I know, but it basically is like this is the most important stuff you need to get where you're going. Forget about all the other little fluffy details. It's kind of like that. Yeah?
I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10.
Okay, 7 out of 10.
Because it's not a subset.
Way better than the grades I got in school, by the way. It wasn't like a 58, and I had to take the test again. So
right,
yeah,
yeah. It's not a subset of information. It's the same information, but it's pure. It's more trying to build on that analogy. Like if someone had like a complete document of all of the information of everyone available in the building, it's that same information, but it's without any of the formatting that person needs in order to navigate all of the content.
That's interesting.
So it's
okay.
So it's really just it would be, it's all the people's names, the type of car that they drive, all that information, the ways that they can interact with them, their phone numbers, all that stuff. It's all of that information, and it's provided in a way that is parsable and is makes it easy for computers or other things to interact with that information. So it's pulling out all of that stuff and none of the formatting of the page.
So the analogy is close, but
yeah,
because it's not a subset.
It's not a subset of information.
Got it.
So even
I was trying to think of a way to clean up the analogy, but I think we'd have to get out of that building to do it and start with something else. I don't know what that analogy would. If somebody has a good analogy, let us know. But that hopefully struggling through that analogy has given you a bit of an idea of what this accessibility tree is. But the purpose of the accessibility tree is that it's easier for the machine to read. And the reason why it showed up in the first place is the machine that we were talking about was a browser communicating with a screen reader.
Mm-hmm.
So that the screen reader could kind of get down to this, the important level of this information versus having to deal with kind of the messiness that might exist in the DOM. Yeah?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yep.
So that's the accessibility tree. And the point here that Saladin makes, I said that right, is that AI, this is just 3 ways that AI can look at your website. Right? Do you remember these?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to quiz you and see what you get. What are the 3 ways?
So there's vision AI.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the vision models where it's basically using computer vision to take a snapshot of the page and look at it and then try to interact with the things that it thinks are interactable or content that is on the page. And so it tries to scrape that out using computer vision. There's the accessibility tree.
Which, number 1, takes a lot of computing power to do.
Yes.
Like when you take an image, you break down the image and you OCR it and you figure it all out and all that. That's like the most intensive thing AI can do.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. So it's number 2.
Not most intensive, but it's pretty up. It's up there, and it's getting cheaper all the time. Yeah. There's the accessibility tree as a way to pull that information out.
We just talked about the accessibility tree, Justin. I know what it is now. It's a
like
building.
Foreshadowing.
It's a building.
It's a building. And then there's hybrid approaches that kind of like use both of those models.
Yeah. Okay.
And try to.
So you know what's interesting about that? As I was reading, this is a thought that I had, and it's that like we said, this vision version takes a lot of computing power versus looking at the accessibility tree, right? And I'm like, AI is the opposite of a person, of a person who has vision, right? Like most people default to vision, right? Picture's worth 1,000 words, all that kind of stuff. It's almost like this preferred way to interact with the world. So if you say to me, and I, with my dyslexia, this is probably double for me, right? But like, consume this by sitting down and reading words, I would be like, least favorite, and the most intense on my brain, hardest for me. But if you went, here's 2 pictures that represent all of it, and it's all you need to know, I'd be like, sweet, I'm there instantly. I'd be like, I'm there, very little brain power. And so it's interesting to me because if you think of that this is all put into place for folks who are blind, it's almost like this role reversal where all this time, the way that people who are blind consume the web is the most efficient way to consume the web.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like the vision, the web browser visual interface is a crutch for people who prefer and rely on vision most of the time. Do you see that flip I'm doing there?
Yeah.
So it's almost like have the people who need the accessibility been the ones to force the web in that direction, and the people who don't need the accessibility, this is a weird flip-flop, right, are the ones that have been saying, hey, write this right for us too, please. We don't need that mess. And we're like, we don't care how it's written. We're looking at it. And so it's almost like this role reversal that I think is very, very interesting. But that leads us to this point is that the most efficient way for artificial intelligence to consume the web is by consuming this accessibility tree. And it doesn't want to deal with your messy DOM. It doesn't by default want to deal with your processor consuming pictures. It's like, hey, this accessibility tree gives us what we need. We want to look at that and move on. Therefore, if your site's not accessible, if your accessibility tree is not watered and beautiful, then it's like late fall, no more pretty colors. So that one brown leaf is still hanging on, right? Charlie Brown Christmas tree. If your accessibility tree on your website is a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, then you're actually missing out on what search engine optimization looks like today. You're actually missing out on people being able to consume your content because the AI, the bots, are skipping over it. And he brings some statistics in here that say more this year, 2026, we crossed over this threshold where more bots are crawling the web than people, which was predicted. And they talk about somebody who predicted it, and I don't remember the person's name, but they predicted it would happen in 2027. So the prediction came through. It just came through early, which I think is like a win. Oh, and by the way,
Is it?
I have to rate you on the quiz. I didn't rate you on the quiz. I got a 70 on mine.
Yeah.
The quiz was the 3 types,
Yeah.
ways that AI consumes. I'm giving you a 72 because I don't want you to do better than me.
But I gave you I gave you a 70 and you gave me a 72. That's 2
What's 2
percentage
points better?
points.
You're right.
Yeah.
Math's hard. No, obviously you nailed it.
And English is silly.
I don't even know why I reached back to that. You just nailed it. You're smarter than me. Everybody knows it. So there's that we've got this increase of bots. But here's the crazy thing that he mentioned, and I didn't realize this, but it makes total sense, is that we've got a decrease in accessibility on the web. For the first time in 2026, instead of having this small uptick, and we're talking percentage of content on the web, so up recently we've had this small uptick every year. The web's slightly more accessible, and now it's falling again. And do you want to tell people why, Justin?
Well, so he's leveraging the data from the web from WebAIM's, from their million site survey. Pretty famous if you're in accessibility circles. Pretty famous survey. But their conclusion was specifically with this uptick was that it had to do with people vibe coding and the introduction of vibe coding, particularly like new homepages and things like that. Now, what's interesting about that?
Pause you 1 second there. I'm sorry, but I just want to say for a non-technical audience, vibe coding is when you strictly use AI to build you an app and it writes all the code. That's vibe coding. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's a new term, so I just wanted to define it.
No, it's a good break. What's interesting and what I wanted to go back through was whether or not WebAIM's survey, of the million pages that they scan, because there's all these indexes out there that look at the most popular pages across the web, and they analyze the top 1 million pages. How many of those home pages are from sites that are new versus sites that have those, like, do we have a lot of new contestants this year? Did some drop out? Like, how much carryover was there from 2025 to 2026? So that might give us that particular bump. I don't know.
So are you arguing that maybe it's not as much because of vibe coding is?
I think vibe coding certainly plays a part of that.
Yeah.
And it could be used to justify the bump, but reading the article made me want to go and dig into their data a little bit more to see.
I see you.
So
the questions being, is the change in vibe that exists within this administration also part? I mean, that's the thought I had, and I actually have another thought related to that we can get into, but it could be that there's less emphasis on accessibility because of that, except for you did have the Title II and HHS deadlines looming for the first part of the year. So that would kind of like work against that.
But it could also be because it's looking at the top pages, like the most trafficked pages that are out there. So it's all by traffic. And so did we see some pages drop out? The home pages for some sites drop out because, hundreds of thousands of new, well, not hundreds of thousands, but maybe let's say like 50,000 new websites sprung up overnight because they were vibe coded websites. Like that would unseat some of those because there's this new popular tool that's out, but it was all vibe coded. So that's the are those new entrants into the million pages what changed it? Or like, are we going to see, I guess what I would say is, would we see a correlation between the uptick of new entrants in that million pages that correlates to the same change in slope of the line of the the new issues that we saw?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there a correlation there,
Yeah.
or is it the same
You're,
million pages and maybe the tooling just got better, or like what happened?
right, right. But your point is that it made you curious about the data.
Yeah,
You're a geek
yeah,
and you're like, okay, I see
yeah,
what they're saying. This looks like interesting data that I'd love to dig into and maybe try and make some other correlations.
yeah. I don't
Um,
think I don't think it's necessarily 100% vibe from vibe coding, but
yeah,
I
I
think
think that's
there's
fair. I mean,
definitely
nothing's
yeah,
ever. I mean, everybody wants things to be that kind of binary and like this is the
yeah.
reason, and it's almost never one thing. It's almost always multiple things, or there's multiple
Mm-hmm.
effects from one thing or whatever. So the other thing that I thought was interesting in this article is this sort of the AI snake eating its tail
Mm-hmm.
aspect of this, right? And what I mean by that is that Slobodin points out that more of the web is being created through this vibe coding or AI coding. The data set that vibe coding uses to write code is all the code on the web itself, essentially. And that's not great for accessibility. So this is a big problem that we have in accessibility. It's like, okay, great that people are vibe coding, but we've been working for years to try and get code that's accessible. The majority of the code out there isn't, and that's the example that these tools have to go by. So they're writing tools, websites, whatever, that aren't very accessible. And if people aren't intentional about building skills, testing the final results, fixing it, you got a bunch of stuff that's not accessible. So the inaccessible code is difficult for AI bots to crawl, and AI writes inaccessible code. So it's kind of the snake eating
Mm-hmm.
its tail scenario here, where AI's dependent on accessibility, but incapable without humans being strongly in the loop of creating accessible code. So to me, that was a really interesting. And if you need a reason not to be as confident in AI today as you were yesterday, there's today's reason right there in my mind, right? We're starting to
Mm-hmm.
get used to AI. We're starting not to disbelieve that it kind of can do everything perfectly. And that's part of the reason. The other thing I found interesting about this is that we do have this de-emphasis of accessibility in the administration, and a lot of that has to do with these sort of business reasons, right or wrong, that are being cited, right? That's why we have Title II in
Yeah.
HHS extending, right? Is the administration
Mm-hmm.
said. So however you feel about that is how you feel about that. But de-emphasizing accessibility has far-reaching implications beyond disability, and it also has these far-reaching implications that may affect your business. So if you're not making your website accessible, but your competitors are, not only do they open up their content and products to a whole other group of people that you haven't opened up yours to, they also may be getting much better results, period, when people are trying to find them.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, well, particularly with the WebAIM stuff, I can't see that making of that big of an issue. But it's a good point, and it's something that you would want to go in and look at the data, because that's the cool thing about WebAIM is that they do publish all their data. They make us they make some good posts about it and stuff, but the data's out there, so you can go through and see, and you could say like show me all of the U.S. government sites in 2025 and 2026, and what was the change over time, specifically looking at U.S. government websites. Um, so might be an interesting thing for our blog. Keep that
Yeah.
still
So
after me
you're saying
for.
you don't quite buy it, and
I
you'd
don't.
like to dig further into the data to see if the
Yeah,
data really supports something like that before you would.
yeah. I mean,
you
we're
would
two
say.
years into the administration, and pages change, but you know, a lot of those websites are maintained by government contractors and such. You know, they're not going to rush right out and like redo a website. We're also only looking at the homepage of these sites as
Well, but
well.
do you think that the assertion that a more accessible site is easier found by search engines and AI bots?
Then
Statistically significantly more easy to find? Or do you think that it has some
mm,
little effect, but not as much as it's not going to rattle your business?
I don't think it's. I think it's statistically more easier. It's going to be easier to find, but it's not. There are ways. Like there used to be like for like single page apps. If you built a single page apps, then it was really difficult for a search engine to to send its crawlers through it and find the index information. There's ways around that, and so you
Okay.
can build spas all day long and and have Googlebot can search
So
it.
you
So
wouldn't lean super hard into it.
no,
All right.
no.
That's good.
Now
That's interesting.
there
I mean,
is
I obviously was buying into it a lot more than you are. I don't know that I am now or not, but
there is a concerning anti-pattern with this article.
anti-pattern. That's a cool
Yeah.
phrase.
So an anti-pattern is typically you would so patterns are typically like good things that you want to happen.
Hmm.
The case is you've built an accessible site. It's going to make it easier for someone using a screen reader or assistive technology to navigate that page. That's the pattern that we want. The anti-pattern to this is, hey, we all just found out that that AI is using the accessibility tree to navigate and pull information out of your website. We don't want the information on our website to show up and be indexed by these AI. So we're going to now not make our site accessible.
That's happening?
Well, no, that's not happening. That's the anti-pattern here.
Mm.
That's the that's the that's the way that if you're a website and you're out there and you're like, well, I don't want my stuff to show up in these to be searched and to show up in these to be indexed by these AI
AI
models.
bot.
Well, I'll throw an aria hidden on my body element and poof, it all
I'd
goes
be
away.
I'd be curious to what the use case of not wanting to be found would be. I mean, if you have a secret website, you have a secret website. Like that's just it, right? But otherwise, it's it's sort of like, and maybe there's a use case I don't know about, but to me, it's like so you put a billboard out, but then you drive a truck in front of it because you don't want anybody to see it. That's like what use case is there for that? Like it's a
Right.
billboard. It's
Well,
out
the
there to
good
be
news,
seen.
we do have laws and regulations out there that are going to prevent someone from doing that. But that's a very quick knee jerk reaction. Like, can't you see some CEO like, oh, we don't want websites, we don't want our content to show up in these AI models. Like, don't index our stuff.
Every
And
CEO I know right now can't form an entire sentence without some AI in it in a positive way. I'd like for a few CEOs to be like, hey, we should be a little more cautious about this stuff than we are.
yeah, well, I mean, there's a like kind of a NIMBY argument there, like
Yeah,
index everybody else's stuff, but not mine.
not mine. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right. I'm not
that's my,
I'm not imagining the use case for that, but it's a
yeah.
really interesting thing. And just the phrase anti-pattern,
Hmm.
because it made me feel like I was in, the bridge of the Enterprise for a minute. And I'm like, do we have to worry about the anti-pattern or the antimatter?
Both,
All
actually.
right. So check out this article, Accessibility Tree, How AI Agents Read Your Site and It Is Breaking.
Yeah,
Slobodan
it's a good primer.
Manik, it's a really interesting article, really interesting take and breakdown as you just heard. If you have thoughts, like obviously Justin and I we're kind of working our way through this and have different thoughts. If you have thoughts about what we're saying, feel free to post them wherever you want on social or when we post, or you can post on the page that we, on the Inclusion Impact website, wherever you want to. But we'd like to hear from you. So you want to get into Wilco stuff?
Yeah.
You ready for that? Okay.
Sure.
I knew you were waiting for that. All right. Well, let's talk about Design for All Part 3, All or Nothing. Why don't you intro this one?
You mean so in this particular article, Wilco, so continuing on from like part one, so just to recap real quick, part one of the series, and this is part three. Part one, he talked about like different types of standards work, and particularly started thinking about not just WCAG, but like how do you manage accessibility across an organization? So that was part one. Part two, he looked at WCAG and noted that while it's fairly rigid and has some very specific things that it's testing, that the EN 17161
you get an A for that. It's a solid. It's a solid A plus right there.
that the standard that he's talking about, which is EN 171 darn it, I did it once, but now I can't do it again.
Nice now, geez.
EN 17161, designed for all, that as a standard, it fills in some of those gaps left that WCAG doesn't address. So here in three, he's talking really kind of more about like WCAG's that there's some unrealistic things about it. Particularly, he talks a lot about conformance and how WCAG is set up to focus really on single pages. Like you can work, you can do a lot of things. You can make a page conformant. That's great. Now you've done one page out of the thousands of pages on your site. That doesn't mean your site is accessible. It means you've made one page out of the 1,000 pages accessible. Good job. Now you've got 999 to go. Now, through templating and other things like that, you may have solved a lot of things there. Or you may be able to get your templates accessible, but you're embedding third-party content. Maybe your content from authors or employees. Maybe you run like kind of like a Facebook type site or something like that where people can drop in images, and so I can make the shell accessible. But what about the individual pieces of content that other people are dropping in here? Am I responsible for that? So WCAG addresses that. But what the Design for All spec does is it goes above that and also makes a way for you to kind of define within your organization what are the gaps, what are the issues, and how do we plan to address those. So he spends kind of the bulk of the article talking about this concept of issue registries and having a place where you can identify the accessibility issues that are ongoing within your website or across your organization. And here are the plan to address those.
Yeah. So the really interesting things to me about this, and that was very good explanation. And the first point that you were making about this WCAG is sort of one page, 1 point in time, and it's a bit all or nothing, right? Versus the EN 17161. Now you got me messed up. 17161. It's 1716.1. That's what it is. And I want to say it's 1716.1, but when I try and say the numbers like everybody else does, it messes up. But anyways, the EN 1716.1, I'm going to say it that way from now on. I hope it catches on. Everybody starts saying it that way. It's much easier.
All the cool kids.
That is the organization. That's looking at the organization. So I'm going to go for another analogy here. I'm more confident about this analogy, but it's sort of like if you built a car. So you built a car from scratch, and say you built the car perfectly accessible, right, from scratch. That is one car, and that is way different than saying, I'm a car manufacturer and I'm going to manufacture multiple cars, different styles of cars, and I'm going to use the same method or the same standard or whatever that I applied to building this one car to that. And if you think about it this way, so there's somebody that would turn around immediately and go, wait, you can't do that. Manufacturing a bunch of cars is a process that needs to be managed. We need to build that accessibility that you're talking about into the processes. Why are you talking about individual cars now? Right? And that's kind of with WCAG, where like WCAG informs how to build a car accessibly, a car being analogous to the page, and we're going like, okay, well, let's apply that to our manufacturing line. And it's like, okay, well, it's informing some stuff in the manufacturing line, but we're having a lot of things come out inaccessible because we didn't address the process of manufacturing. We tried to apply a standard to each each one of these cars, or a representative car from each model, or like, how do we do this? You took one car away and you audited it, and now you're trying to decide how that makes your whole manufacturing line accessible. So when you think about it that way, it's kind of like almost more obvious than, and that's kind of the analogy that formed in my head when he was talking. I was like, that's a really good way to think about it. It really kind of clears that up. And then this concept of the issue registry, which, you do me a favor and explain the issue registry, because he's very careful along the way to be going like, I'm not talking about just standard issue tracking here, right? Like if you think of issue registry, you're like, why not just say your Jira ticketing system or your list of issues or whatever? And he's very careful about going, I'm not talking about just a list of issues.
Because I think because this EN standard, which tangent
1716-1.
1716, yes. Now you've got me double thinking it.
1716 Uno.
No, the the fact that you can't just go and download the standard just does drive me a little nuts. But that aside, so yeah, so he's talking about it really from more of, it's not just the failures, but it's issues with process. It's issues with
Mm-hmm.
the results from audit. I mean, it's bigger than, it needs to track things that are not um, that aren't directly fixable through code. So you need some place where you can identify at a higher level things that aren't just code, but process things, results from usability studies. Like, how are you going to you need a place where you can aggregate all of that information. And, if you're using something like Jira, Jira's got a nice suite of tools looking across products. Maybe you're using Jira for your actual results of your audit, and that's rolling up into, um, some product tool or something like that that Atlassian offers, that allows you to kind of see this overarching issue way. But then he goes,
It's Go ahead. Keep
no,
going.
no, go ahead. I
I
was
was
going
going
to
to say
jump.
it's kind of like that. We tend to look at accessibility issues in this very simple break fix way, right? Like the color contrast on this page doesn't meet the color contrast ratio guidelines. Therefore, I need to put a ticket in place that fixes the color contrast. And then somebody goes in there and they change the colors and they go, high five, we did it, right? Which is great. That's fine. So the really interesting thing he's talking about with the 1716-1 is that in this issue registry is that you would now use that to inform a bigger process issue. So now maybe you look at that and you go, holy moly, we've got 500 color
Mm-hmm.
contrast issues that showed up. Why do we keep creating color contrast issues? And then you go back and you go, well, our content creators were never taught about color contrast. Maybe what we need from an organizational standpoint is training for our designers or for our content people. Maybe they're all coming out of content versus coming out of the SDLC, right? Maybe they're coming out of the SDLC versus whatever the case is. You trace that back to its origin in the organization, and you fix the process that's making that thing show up in the first place. That is where the 1716.1 pops in, and or that's where this issue registry is more than just that basic break fix. One of the ways, in addition to all the things that you just said.
And the solution for an issue could be a technical thing. We're not consistently addressing color contrast. Ways to address that might be, spending time in Figma to use variables and define a pattern library. Could be downstream defining, a design pattern. You're picking up a better way of building your components. There's lots of different solutions for that. But the issue at hand is we are not consistently building, using colors correctly across our website. So we're going to address that as an issue.
So this is one of the things that's really interesting to me, because talking to organizations for 13 years in accessibility, one of the, we'll be fair, like a lot of the reasons why you're on the phone with somebody that says, I need an audit, I need this accessibility thing, oh, by the way, what is it? I just learned about it yesterday, is because of a lawsuit, the fear of a lawsuit, all these things. So there's this, let's fix this stuff and move away, right? This finish line that is implied out there that we as accessibility professionals really know doesn't exist, but it's very, very hard to talk to people about that next step, which is how do you fix the organization? But the rub is, in what Wilco's saying here about 1716.1, is that is the way that you do this. You maintain your risk mitigation. You create efficiency. You make it more cost effective. If you keep circling back around and wadding up the WCAG guidelines and hawking them at your website once a year, it will always be painful and expensive.
Yeah.
That's why we work with the accessibility maturity model in the AMM, which is not, shares a lot with Ian 1716.1, right? And
I liked his analogy. I can't remember if it was in Article 3 or 4, but he makes the WCAG is the horizon. It's what we are striving for. EN 1716.1 is the road. It is the path that we are going to drive on to get there.
Well,
which makes sense.
That's a good point, because he's not at all saying that WCAG is not, like, let's forget WCAG, 1716.1 all day long, EN 1716.1 all day long. What he's saying is that WCAG very nicely satisfies one piece of this puzzle, and that EN 1716.1 would be sort of the perfect complement. Are you smiling? Did I screw that up?
No, you said it right.
Okay.
I just think it's funny that we keep saying, we should just say like the design for all,
I'm going to show off to the world that I can remember Ian 17.
You're locked in now.
Yeah, and plus I'm trying to coin Ian 1716.1, but instead of 17161 like everybody says it. So WCAG's important because how do you measure? Like, just go back, right? Like, flip the script a little bit. If you make all these process changes, how the heck are you going to decide that they're working? You need WCAG for that, right? We need to go like, okay, well, now let's look at our website. Let's evaluate our website. And what do we evaluate it against? We evaluate it against WCAG, and we look at it and we go, well, this looks like it worked. Looks like it didn't work because these issues don't show up anymore. These issues do show up. And guess what? We've got some new issues that are going to inform more changes. So it's all working together.
Yeah.
So talk to me about 4 then, the very last one. uh, pa- patient partner, and this is where he really talks about what it would look like to adopt EN 1716.1
Yeah.
along with the
Well,
WCAG is a standard.
well, with this one, he's really kind of getting into like really kind of like what the future holds for it. Um, and like there's um, uh, particularly thinking around like WCAG 3, a lot of people in accessibility are like, excited about WCAG 3 and what's coming up
As
for
it should
it,
be.
well, as they should be. Because it's gonna, you know, but the promise is huge for WCAG 3. And it's gonna slice bread and, it's gonna tire shoes and make me a sandwich and all those things,
I'd like
which
a
I'm very,
can it make me a cup of coffee
no
or
coffee.
a cappuccino or something?
Sorry, they're gonna make sure that there's no coffee in it, I'm sure. Um,
No, I'm not a
so yeah,
fan.
it's supposed to do all these great things, and we're all looking forward to it, but it's years away. Like Wilco says, like
4 years, I think he said.
4 to 5 years
4 years
away.
away
Yeah.
at least. And we
Um,
know that when we think it's 4 years away, it means it's another 8 years away.
well, but that's the part that he gets to, is that um, you know um, even though WCAG 3 is 4 years away, what is it going to look like to adopt it? What's it going to look like to bring that into U.S. EU laws, standards? To update everything so that's so that it references the WCAG 3. And I know our friend Nick has an article coming out about
Exciting.
that topic too. So that'll be a really interesting one. But it's like we have EN 301549 today. We have this EN 1716.1 today. We've got a lot of standards and things that we can begin using today. We don't
Mm.
have to wait for WCAG 3 to come along and save us all.
So this made me think about something else too, which is a little aside from Wilco's points here. But one of the problems I have with WCAG 3.0 and the 4 years away, that may be longer than 4 years, and who knows, is that everything's changing so rapidly, right? So what this group is sitting there contemplating today, even if they're trying to guess what's in the future is going to be some that maybe they guess kind of accurately, maybe they don't, whatever. But I worry that by the time we're ready to roll out something like 3.0, if it's already going to be antiquated. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, right? But that's what I worry about. And the one thing I really like about his emphasis on EN 1716.1 is that that's a little more future proof. In other words, if you're looking at these processes,
Mm-hmm.
in these sort of general categories of processes, seems to me like that's going to hang on more than do we care about color contrast? What if we aren't using that anymore, or it's very small, and the way we consume the web because of AI is completely changed, and we're all downloading thoughts through a chip on our head. I don't know,
In the next
like,
4 years,
dude,
probably
stuff's
not.
moving fast.
It is moving
It
fast.
could happen. We were talking
Well,
about the
but
other day. They're like, are you ready to put the AI web chip in your head?
yeah,
It's
but historically, like you look at WCAG 2 launched right around the same time that mobile phones hit the market. Um, and that's why WCAG 2, you know, it is technology independent, but it is very focused on a desktop, laptop based browser system, not a mobile device.
well, and I think the phone versus desktop, it was like a portal size change that created different UI requirements.
Hmm.
So it's like we could sort of shift WCAG over there a little bit, and it
Yeah,
still kind of works.
yeah. Well, and
I
that's
don't know
why
that we're going to be that lucky again
I
because of how
well,
rapidly things are changing.
true, but I think the direction that they're taking, what I've seen so far with WCAG 3, where it's more focused on how people interact with technology, um, and meeting and being more person focused, is I think some of that is going to mitigate itself. But I also, a lot
I
of
still
people
think
look
it's
back at WCAG 2 and when it was launched and go, we don't want that same mistake again. Let's, as things are changing, particularly in this time of AI, you know, it may be that,
what if 4 years from now it's Minority Report, right? Like, what if my whole web experience and my job is done
mhm,
through this set of glasses? I don't have a physical keyboard in front of me because I can lay out whatever I want in front of me. I can move it around with gestures. I can customize that to work for me. I can
mhm,
turn off the vision part of it, do it with sound. Like, what what if the way we and that's me being able to imagine that because I saw the Minority Report, right? What if the way we interact with technology so fundamentally changes? I mean, we can they can put a you can put a hat on and control a
mhm,
cursor with your thoughts. Now,
mhm,
you can drive a wheelchair with a by clicking a retainer in your mouth and moving it around with your tongue. You
mhm,
can use a word board by looking at it with your eyes, right? All that stuff is possible today. How the heck are we going to be interacting with technology 4 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? And by the way, this comes out 4 years from now, but it's got to
mhm.
last. So think about 10 years from now. I mean, we're going to be in 2030, Justin.
Yeah.
2030. We're going to be we're gonna be in a flying autonomous car, right? I'm not
Okay.
even gonna be driving the car anymore. So the way I interact with the car is gonna be to tell it where to go,
Mhm.
right? I've been in a
Yeah.
Waymo in Austin, Texas, man. It's unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
I, I told you my Waymo story. I was reading my phone while this thing was going, and this was at almost midnight, and it braked all of a sudden in the middle of the road. I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. Here the technology is gonna. I'm done, right? I look up from my phone and I'm like, why did this thing break? There's nothing there. And then a beat later, I saw a person all in black in the middle of the road moving, and I'm like, I probably would have hit him. The Waymo saw that. I couldn't see that. So, how are we not going to rapidly move to self-driving cars? How are we not going to rapidly move to not using a physical keyboard anymore, not looking at a monitor, not everybody doing it the same way. Like right now, predominantly
Yeah.
we're keyboard, monitor, mouse, and we're trying to
Mhm.
adapt that
Yeah.
to people who maybe can't use a mouse, can't see the monitor, right?
Mhm.
I we're gonna I think we're all gonna be doing our own thing.
Well, we are. And I think the technology that we use to interact with, we're getting way off topic now, but thanks,
Not
Bruno.
really. We're talking about
But
WCAG
yeah,
3.0 and
yeah,
the reason why
well, true.
EN 17.16.1
But if
might
you,
be a better thing to adopt, or not,
well, yeah,
but maybe needed in addition at this stage, and may have more longevity.
but from a future, from a future standpoint, like the way that we interact with computers is going to likely fundamentally change. Um, but how that
Brain chip.
computer, well, that really kind of solves a lot of things. Um, if you just had a chip in your head that did all the
Inject it
interactions.
through the eye socket. It's just gonna be in there.
But um, well, except for the scarecrow, because he
Maybe
didn't
because
have a because he didn't have a brain.
he didn't have a brain,
Yeah,
but he did.
um, that's
In the
true.
end, he did. Yep.
Um, but with WCAG 3, if you focus on how people interact with technology, um, if that's really where WCAG 3 as a standard ends up going, then you can say things like, um, you the technology must support these types of methods. And so when colors are presented, that they're presented with this much contrast, that when images are presented, that they are described, correctly by the person that created the content. Um, that that if gestures are used, that it supports these different modes. And what that does is that it now begins to, like painting a picture, like it's starting to, yes, it's starting to narrow your options on what you can build. But at the same time, if you had infinite options and you're just staring at a blank canvas, like, and that's harder. If you start to say, well, you're going to use these paints and this size canvas, and you're going to use like these specific constraints, now here's your subject. And this is how you're going to interact with that. So, and this is how we're going to determine whether or not everyone can interact with that piece of technology. Then I think WCAG 3 then begins to really scale and become technology independent.
I mean, I think they're certainly going to try. And you know more about what
Only a little bit.
I still
Yeah.
worry about. Not I have a lot of confidence in the group that puts WCAG 3 together. It's more that, like, are we going to need to come up with a way where our standards change more in line with when the technology changes, that it's just a difficult task to really understand. I mean, like I said, these different versions have had long 10, 15-year longevity cycles. Things are going to change in ways we can't predict, to where WCAG 3 is going to be obsolete really quick.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
maybe
if you're,
even before it hits the street. But
yeah. I mean, if they're
so they
building,
got to try.
like, where I would be concerned would be like, oh, well, we have to make sure that the WCAG 3 specifically calls out screen readers. Like, I think that would be like, we don't know where technology is going to go, and screen readers themselves may become obsolete. There may be wholly different ways for someone who is blind to interact with technology, uh, across
Brain
devices,
chips.
across brain chips. Um, and so, like, that's where you don't want to make that type of an assumption. You might have some helpful guidance and things to help bridge the gap. Um, but, yeah.
It's hard to predict. I mean, if we just take something like meta glasses, and we can wrap up after this, but if we take something like meta glasses, if you said meta
Mm-hmm.
glasses to me 5, 10 years ago, I'd be like, well, we got to be really careful about these because, we're talking about something that's vision based, and how are people blind? Meta glasses came out and blind people were like, yeehaw, this is what we
Right.
need. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the functionality was so holistic that they're like, no, this thing can look at something and describe it to me, like Orcam could, or whatever. And then if you're low vision, there's other implications and blah, blah, blah. It's like this, it was really a well-rounded
Mm-hmm.
device, and it can do so much. And so
Mm-hmm.
anyways, I
And
mean,
it was
even integrating with Braille devices, and forget about it, right? It's just a ton of stuff. So it's the ability to predict. I would have been so wrong about the implications of
Mhm.
smart glasses 10 years ago.
Yeah, never.
You know,
That's one of the things that I learned a long time ago, and I always keep coming back to is you will never fully understand how someone is going to use a new technology.
yeah, that's my point.
Um,
So if I wrote a standard for smart glasses 10 years ago, 5 years ago,
mhm.
it would have to be rewritten already. I mean,
Yeah.
that's me with bad predictions, but all right. Any last minute to wrap up?
No, I will say that in I keep ready to say episode 4, article 4 of Wilco's things. Down towards the bottom, there's some action items. I like that he ends his series with some action items. So go and check those out, particularly if you work in procurement. Um,
I
uh,
found those
th
interesting.
yeah, this EN 1761 may be very useful for you from a procurement standpoint. So go grab the company credit card, go and buy the standard. and read through that, because it may be useful, something for you to start implementing today.
I like your last pronunciation. It's like Ian 701. Here, Ian 16, 17, 16 to 1701. All right. There'll be a quiz, everyone. When you see it at CSUN next year, we're going to point at, or enabling, when you see it as eminent, we're going to point at you, and you have to say Ian 17, 16, 1.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody practice. You got from now until October to practice. They're not going to do it.
All right.
Thank you. Now that we have broken down accessibility for you, we hope you go forth and keep it accessible.
Thank you for listening to the Accessibility Breakdown by Inclusion Impact Accessibility.